Everyone can
Oh,
see. Yes. There we go.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we are live. So, Mike, how are you doing? Elias, let me say
All
it
right.
right. I got it. Mike Elias. And I'm here talking to him again. And I want to jump right into how are you doing, by the way? You doing
I'm
all
fan-
right today?
I'm fantastic. It's always fun to talk to you.
Great. Oh, good. Well, I wanted to run something by you. It sort of pertains to what we've been talking about. And the next thing that I was going to. So I've been talking about everybody's five sermons, the five things that they come back to, the five lessons that they've cultivated over the years. But the next thing I want to talk about, the thing I've been working on, is the idea of evil and sin. And what I haven't completely organized my thoughts. I thought I'd get some input from you, but coming to the idea that evil and sin at its very basic, like reduced down to what I can sort of define it as, is anything that alienates us from each other and God. And so it is, so like anything, any action, anything we partake in, anything that we think about, or I guess that's any action or anything we partake in that causes us to turn inward, and that breaks relationship with each other, with other people, and with God. What do you think?
Um, that makes sense as like a general definition. I think I would say that aligns well with when the educated Jew asks Jesus in the scriptures, like, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he adds, on these two commandments rest all the law and the prophets. Like, you do these things and you've fulfilled all the law and the prophets. So it kind of makes
Right.
sense that the inverse of that would be anything you do that would negate or replace or impede or challenge or contradict love of God or love of others. You could call sin, or maybe um, I think there are degrees. There are certain things that
Mhm.
that that are called faults rather than sins.
Hmm.
Um, and
Well, it goes to the. There was I had a really good friend, sort of a mentor, a counselor guy that said, he once said something that sort of blew my mind. And he said, anything you feel guilty about, you are guilty. um and to say that, like, not in the sense of, because that there are no, so the rules that we break, if we feel guilty, we're breaking some internal rule. And it made me think about sin in the sense of, like, when we feel guilty, we pull away from others. When we feel like we've transgressed against somebody, if against God, we pull away from God. And it's that hiding, it's that, and it is that essential nature of sin, of doing wrong, that is in our system, of dealing with the world, that it's just how it is, that when we feel guilty, we are guilty, in the sense that we act out of it, we pull away, we hide. What do you think?
um, this is something that I've struggled with a lot personally, and so I'm
Hmm.
still sorting it out in my heart. And I can see
Hmm.
that at least two different angles that have different implications. One is there's a way you can back that up in scripture, because I think St. Paul in one of his letters says, if it, or maybe I don't remember if it's St. Paul or if it's Jesus himself who says, like, if if a man believes he is sinning, then for him that action is a sin or something like
Yeah,
that.
I think Paul talked about that. Yeah.
Also, okay, so that
Yeah.
sounds at face value like the end of the story. If you think you're guilty, then you are. But I really don't think that's accurate. Definitely not accurate enough to hang your hat on, at least in my experience and what I've come to learn. And one of the major reasons for that is that guilt itself is an attack vector for evil. Uh,
Mhm.
the the devil, the demons, the human frailty can
Mhm.
bring us down by grabbing onto our guilt complex and yanking on it and ruminating on it. And, clinical
Mhm.
depression often involves this constant self reproach, this constant
Yeah.
ruminating. And not only is that damaging and in many cases its own kind of sin by itself, that kind of despair,
Mhm.
and self reproach, and that's absence of self love that is required for God's sake. You are a
Mhm.
creature of God, and there is a way in which we should love
Mhm.
ourselves, um, like we would love our neighbors. Like, we hear
Mhm.
about love your neighbor as yourself, but I have struggled a lot with loving myself as much as I love my neighbor. I will never be
Mhm.
as mean to others as I
Yeah.
am to myself in my head when I think I've done some tiny thing wrong and feel immense guilt
Mhm.
about it. So there's that other aspect, and to go a little further on that, even, um, the guilt complex can be a way in which we discredit and discount and refuse to believe in and to accept God's mercy.
Mhm.
So when we feel excess guilt, that's actually, from what I've heard in the writings of the saints, one of the things that that hurts God's heart the most, is that He wants us to accept the mercy that He has for us, this
Yeah.
incredible, infinite ocean of mercy. And we are sitting there going, no, I don't deserve it, blah, blah, blah. There's no way you're that good. Like, imagine if your child was beating himself up for months because he like ate
Yeah.
too many hot dogs one day. Like,
Yeah.
no, come on, get on with your life. I love you. You're fine.
Well,
And
I see, but I
constant.
think that's exactly what I'm talking about. I think we have a wrong paradigm, a wrong idea that structures the uh, the concept of guilt. So when I say when we feel guilty, we are guilty, what I am doing is actually diminishing the idea of guilt, because what we've broken isn't like it. So it is impossible. So going back to the idea that if sin and evil is just a breaking of relationship, then it doesn't have anything to do with breaking a rule or breaking a law. Like those things are other people's concepts and constructs of, so somebody might hold us to it, but God holds us to relationship, and we hold each other to relationship. Now, we may break that relationship by breaking a law with each other, but like you said, if my son eats too many hot dogs, it's not going to break my relationship with him. You know what I mean? Like the duty and rule aspect of it is actually an Old Testament concept of sin and evil. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
I think there's an equivalent danger in um, trying to trying to figure out exactly what constitutes a sin on our own, because we
Mhm.
are not impartial judges of that. Uh, we are, we're relatively intelligent ants running
Mhm.
around on this rock, and
Mhm.
we uh, when God defines sin for us, as He does with the Ten Commandments, which are not um, outdated and not overruled. Like, we are
Mhm.
still commanded to follow the Ten
Mhm.
Commandments. It's just that we
Mhm.
now have uh, a more complete means of forgiveness for when we, fail. Uh,
Mhm.
the first thing we have to do is take God's word for it for what constitutes sin, because that's really the
Mhm.
best we can do in the human realm. And then when we have a a more when we've allowed God's definition of sin to shape our consciences more into the design that he has in mind, then
Mhm.
further nuances can emerge and like personal circumstances and stuff like that. But I think our first move has to be to cast ourselves and our judgment onto God's judgment and his revelation. Because if we try to do it ourselves,
Mhm.
we're going to be biased, we're going to sin, we're going to do whatever we want, we're going to rationalize it, because that's what literally everyone has ever done when they try to take it upon themselves. And
Mhm.
that's been a hard lesson for me that has actually been extremely rewarding over the last year or two.
Hmm. Tell me more about that.
Sure. So I entered, the spiritual life, from atheism when I was a late teenager. I, started meditating and went, oh wow, there's all this spiritual stuff. It's real. It's not just, a cope. And uh, I kind of felt like, well, everything is, just different paths up the same mountain. There's obviously truth in all these different religions. So I'm just going to kind of cafeteria pick and choose like my style and what feels right to my conscience and blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
that did, work for a while and to an extent. And I missed some things that I'm very glad that I have now. But lately, as I've become Catholic, I've been uh, also going through this phase that we started talking about earlier, where
Mhm.
starting to, hit uh, the point of diminishing returns on intellectual work for myself personally.
Mhm.
Like at a certain
Mhm.
point, knowledge just becomes kind of procrastination, and you start like the mind starts to become an escape from the heart. The
Mm.
pursuit of intellectual understanding
Mhm.
ceases to be education and edification and becomes trying to escape the things that our soul needs and that our heart needs to do in order to grow and become more holy. And
Mhm.
so as I've been trying to resist the temptation to figure out the universe better than anyone ever and like come up with the perfect map of it in here, I've been relying
Mhm.
more on the judgment of the holy people, the saints,
Mm.
in the tradition of the Catholic Church. And
Mm.
the the rewarding aspects that I've been referring to have been, and I wrote a blog post about this. The they had there came to a point where they had been right about so many things in my life that I started trusting the teachings of the church more. And it got to a point
Mm.
where even when there were things that I totally did not understand or totally did not agree with on any kind of intuitive or emotional level, I started to bet my behavior that it was true. I started to just go, I don't get this, but they've earned my trust. I'm going to live by it and see what
Mm.
happens. And then only weeks or a month or two later, like some short period of time later, I would I would feel it click in and go, "Oh yeah, that really is drastically superior to what my intuition had said and to what I felt like
Mm.
as a, early 20s, miscellaneous meditator and like spiritual guy." Like
Mm.
masturbation, like promiscuity, like all kinds of things that most spiritual people don't think of as sinful or think that it's old fashioned to think of it as sinful.
Mhm.
I, you know, I started living by the traditional, very long list of things that the Catholic Church regards as sins.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Just trust, saying my judgment actually isn't that great. Let me absorb what the saints have actually, you know,
Mhm.
demonstrated over the millennia.
Well, and I think That's inspiring, and I think that that's exactly not exactly. That's sort of the same direction I've been coming from, like, less with the, Catholic Church and more with the Anglican Church, but they're not really that different.
Yeah,
Uh, they're both, from the, Celtic tradition, but the idea, like, this does for me, that gets back to, so something like masturbation, or what was the other thing you said?
promiscuity.
Promiscuity. These
Human
things,
sex a lot.
promiscuity is in the Bible, but like masturbation, some things that aren't particularly outlined in the, say, like you said, the Ten Commandments, like, these are things that are, sort of like just as important. um I wouldn't say just as important, but they become even more important when we think about our lives as trying to, not trying to, our lives as the important thing that we're working on, the thing that keeps us going, is being in right relationship with each other and with God. And so, because like those things, they break relationship, they make us turn inward, and they make us feel guilty, they make us feel selfish, they and it's this sort of self-indulgence in general that I think gets overlooked when we think of sin as breaking laws, breaking, not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Self-indulgence, eating too much ice cream, for example, can be thought of as a sin, not in terms of making us feel more guilty. And maybe I do feel guilty about it because I'm breaking the system that I'm setting up for myself, as I'm saying, like, wait, this is making me more selfish. This is making me want more. This is, indulgence in general. And but instead of that guilt, like, making me feel depressed, I say, oh, well, I know what cures it. And that is reaching out, and like I don't have to, I don't have to, I, I have to just reorient it's more of a reorientation towards others and God, and confession and reorientation with others and God, so that I don't have to rely necessarily on you know, my own, list of things that I need to do or not do, except for I need to be in right relationship with others and God. And if I'm not, I have to figure out what is it. And usually for me, and I don't think it's the same for everybody, but usually for me, self-indulgence is one of the number one things that keeps me self-oriented rather than oriented towards right relationship with others and God. Does that is is that a better explanation of it? Or does that explanation fit a little bit more with what are your revelations of late?
Yeah, that totally fits. I struggle with that too, and for me, um, I think the problem for me with self-indulgence is not merely that it's excessive, but that God
Mm,
is I am designed to have my needs met by God. And when I go, I don't want your help, God. I want ice cream's help, which is something I've literally kind of thought and acted on before. There's like an infidelity there. It's not just I'm eating too much and it'll make me fat and it's bad for me. It's
mhm,
like it's like my cat went to my evil neighbor's house and ate his food instead of
mhm.
being at my house and eating the food that I give him and receiving pets and love from me and snuggling up on
Yeah,
me. It's like there's something,
yeah,
kind of heartbreaking and parental about that. It's not just
yeah.
that you're gonna get fat or it's like not good for you.
No, exactly. It is exactly what God hated about the more obvious, idolatry of the Israelites. We do the same thing, except it's not as obvious. We don't have little men or whatever that we worship when we feel bad. That's what they had, but we do the same thing. I go to my cell phone. Oh, sweet cell phone, feels better, life is better. But it's an idol. I'm going, like you said, a thing is meeting my need rather than the creator of the universe, or to a lesser extent, the caretakers of the creation, which is each other. Like, so often a lot of what is, I read this thing recently and it's really dominating I keep coming back to it, is the magic you seek is in the work you won't do. And that's so often true with relationships, right? It's like, oh, I wish I could have love. I wish I could have more intimacy. And it's kind of like, well, you haven't gone to your wife and asked for forgiveness. Well, you haven't worked through this with your friend. Well, you have, it's like, well, yeah, but that's too hard.
It's
I
so
want it. Ice cream. Never mind. I'll just have some ice cream.
it's totally
you
true.
know?
And it's so embarrassing because and just accurate. Um, because I've been struggling lately with confusion. Like I've had
Mm.
trouble keeping commitments because one minute I'll be like, yeah, and then a couple days later I'll be like, you know what I really need? Like it's the opposite. And I feel this ambivalence. Meanwhile,
Mm.
meanwhile, I'm telling God, yeah, I want to follow you. I want to do all this stuff and I want to obey
Mm.
you. And he goes, okay, learn to play the piano. And I go, no, I just find a way to not do that. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, like, I'm sending all these confusing signals to God. I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. And then God has me
Yeah.
sending all these confusing signals to other people. I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. And I bet if I did
Mm.
the one thing that I know I'm supposed to do, I would have more certainty in all these other things because I'm sending mixed signals to God and he's letting me live a life of mixed signals. It's very congruent,
Mm.
very coherent. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the underbelly, the dark side of this thing, is that God is constantly reaching out for a relationship, and other people are too. Everybody needs that connection, but God is constantly reaching out with his pure, like you said,
yeah,
we were made to be satisfied in him. And however, when we continually, we were talking the other day about what does it mean to quench the spirit. And I think within this idea of what sin and evil is, it's pretty clear to me that if we continue to say, to send mixed signals, but maybe even worse, if we continue to just say, no, I'm not going to do it,
yeah,
then that becomes a part of our personality and it becomes a part of our soul. And to a point where we may get to, and this is where I believe, hell enters in the picture, is because at the last minute we want to say, wait a minute, yeah, I meant yes, but we can't, maybe we can't even say it, because if we were to say yes at that point, it would be denying who we've been. We'd be have to become a completely different person. And and I think that's possible, but I think that's something God has to, provide for, because it's almost impossible for us. Well, it's impossible for us to just be a different person. Like all of a sudden, just, it takes time to change, to hopefully, or else we don't have personhood, right? Like that's what makes personhood, is the stability of our actions and our actions, and the history that informs that, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, Something my wife was teaching me earlier today or last night. is that when she wants to change something, or she knows she should, but she doesn't want to, she'll pray for help wanting to change.
Mm,
Like, even if I don't want to change, God. I know you want me to, but I don't want to. Help me want to. And she says sometimes it's multiple layers. Help me want to change. Like,
mm,
and she says he always comes through. He always delivers on that. And I think
mm.
that's something that we can kind of take solace in
Yeah.
when we feel stuck as ourselves. And because I do think God always wants to find a justification for completely having mercy on us. Like, what,
Yeah.
I mean, he has mercy on us for allowing us to accept his mercy. uh, he wants us to cry out even if it's at the last second of our life. He wants us to cry out
Yes.
even if it's with only 0.001% sincerity. um, and that all matters. Like, we can always pray. Even the most evil atheist doesn't lose the ability to
Right.
prayerful thoughts and speak
Right.
prayerful words with the vaguest, most distant intention. And I think that's all very important and
Yeah.
available all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because more than whatever that thing is that we are supposed to do, which I think there are lots of things which we are supposed to do, because that's what we are. We're humans that do things. Uh, but beyond that, the thing that God wants more than that is for us just to relate to Him, right? And it's like, so when we say, "Lord, help me want to want to want," well, we're connecting with Him, and that's the main step, right? Like, it's like, I don't want to. Just saying to God, I don't want to,
Yeah,
but I there's something in me that needs to, and help me, right? Like, help me, God. Like that is at its the very basic level is what we need to do all the time. In
yeah,
fact, it may be all we need to do, right? Like, I might not be able to learn how to play the piano, right? On my own. I need God. And maybe God wants me to play the piano. Maybe he doesn't give a crap about the piano or my playing it, but it's something to do with me just like turning back to him,
yeah,
and you know and just talking to him again. And so often I feel like I'm like, I'll talk to you later, God, once I learn to play the piano. I just when I do that, then I'll talk to you. But he's like, I just want to talk to you. I just turn towards me. Because I think your analogy of like my child, like, I don't care, if they spilt the milk or haven't, cleaned their room. I mean, I care, right? I care, but that's not gonna. I would much. I get emotional about it. I would much rather them be in relationship with me than man. That's a deep thought for me, at least. Whoa, that hit me emotionally.
do you have children?
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah, 4 children. Yeah,
That's why you can feel that. I'm not a father.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, it goes the other way too, right? Like, we'd much rather, maybe I don't know how close you are with your parents, but I'd much rather be in relationship with my parents
Yeah,
uh, than like hold something against them that they've done.
yeah. Thank you. That's been a struggle. I mean, my parents and I have a pretty great relationship, but they're atheist Jews and I'm not, and it's
Mm, yeah,
there are certain things that we can't openly share at the moment because
Hmm.
it's and I understand. My dad's
Yeah.
parents, the Holocaust, and he just doesn't want to
Yeah.
talk about Jesus very much. Just understandable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that reminder because I have been tempted to, you know, to prioritize being correct over
Hmm.
being together, and that's actually
Hmm.
that's actually been more of an issue between me and my brother, who's a
Hmm.
activist for trans rights, and so he's very opposite of the philosophically from me, and you know, yeah, I'm still figuring out how to handle that, but at least we still have a relationship, which is good. So thank you for the reminder. I wonder if I'm going to need it today because I'm going to see my folks today.
All right. Wow. Well, Aslan's on the move, brother. God is at work, and you know, I think the more this is even if it's across the wires of the interwebs, I feel like God works in relationship,
Yeah,
and that's where the magic is. But man, so often the hard work is also there. Oh man, and I just pray that the Lord gives you the ability to just give it the whole thing to Him, all of that to Him, and me with my family and my kids and the things that I get frustrated with and the things that get in the way. Yeah, thanks for talking about this with me, man. I appreciate it.
my great pleasure. Thanks for always inviting me to do this. It's deeply rewarding every time.
Yeah, for me too, man. I love this stuff. All right, and thank you for anybody who's tuned in or is tuning in the future or something like that. And we will hopefully be back next week. Or no, next week you're traveling, so
I might be available.
well,
Don't I don't I'm
okay.
not good at schedules in my head, but I'll let you know.
I'm not either. Okay.